Raise your hand if you are an all or nothing person. If you are somebody who gets really excited about something and goes and goes and goes, goes and goes, goes and doesn't know when to stop. Or you're like, you know what? Never mind. I just don't want to do that anymore. And you pick up something completely new. Well, if this is you, and if you are like me, here's a guideline on how to harness all that beautiful energy that you have and put it into something you really care about by creating guidelines. Now, some people might call them rules, but rules suck. Guidelines kind of help you go to where you want to go by creating kind of like one side and the other and finding stability in the middle. So, for example, let's say that people have different ways of saying all or nothing people. Sometimes they call it like an addictive personality. Some people call it, extremist. Some people call it like bipolar, whatever. All the same shit. It's basically you kind of find something that you really love and you do it and you do it, you do it, you do it, and you become obsessed with it. Like let's say, for example, like ice cream, right? You start eating ice cream, you're like, oh my gosh, this ice cream's so good. And so you go eat ice cream and you eat one scoop, you eat two scoops, and then you eat the whole pint. How many times have you done that? I am definitely guilty of that. So, yeah, it's not a big deal to eat a whole pint sometimes, but if you do it 5 days a week, that's kind of a big deal, right? So you got to create like these guidelines for how you create these guidelines. Well, you have to be like very specific. You got to be like, okay, like, do I want to have this thing in my life? Let's say you want to eat ice cream. All right. Well, is it a big deal to have ice cream every night? Not really, depending on your health goals. Let's say you can eat it once, like so. So you're creating a guideline, right? Let's say you're thinking, okay, it's not a big deal to have ice cream every night, but instead of eating a whole pint, I'm gonna eat two spoonfuls. Two spoonfuls is all I get. So that's creating yourself a little guideline. And then if you surpass the guideline, like that is not okay. Like that is 100% not okay. You have to create rules for yourself and be like, okay, this is how much I'm going to have, and that's it. And that's the rule with myself. That's the guideline for myself, and I'm not going to break that. Now, the most important part about this is you cannot break your word. That is the whole point of the game. Now, if it does like happen, like let's say you have three one night and you skip the next day, then you're okay, right? You have to be able to have those like fun, make it a fun game for yourself, but be able to harness that energy of like, like for example, for me, um, when I started going to the gym, I was obsessed with it. I was like, oh my gosh, I want to go every day. And then on the off day, I was like, no, like, come on, I'm just gonna go and do abs. So it's like you get like so obsessed with something that's really good for you, but then you realize, all right, like we need to pump it back. Even it got to the point where I was going to the gym and the guys who worked there were like, hey man, I think you're coming to the gym too often. Like you're killing your gains. And then I was like, oh, okay. All right. So how am I gonna change this? So what I did is I said, all right, I'm gonna work out for 3 days and then I'm gonna take one day off. Then I'm gonna work out for 3 days and I'll take one day off. And so that guideline helped me kind of like harness in my energy of, oh, I want to work out every day. Yeah, 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 yeah. You get what I mean? So if you are an all or nothing person and you are like kind of become like really, really excited about things, this is a way to kind of shift that energy to make a very specific guideline so that you can use the energy, harness it, but put it in a way that is works for you. Now, when it comes to stuff like, drugs and alcohol, this stuff can be dangerous for all or nothing people. And why? Because, let's say you like have one beer and you drink one beer and then you're like, oh, cool. Like another one would be nice. Boom, another one, another one. I know like for me, like, you notice like things that you eat that you keep in your hands, like a burger, like you eat them a lot faster than the ones like you say, like, let's say you have chopsticks and you eat noodles. Why? Because you got to hold on to it. So you go bam, 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 eat, eat, eat. When like the time, 5 minutes goes by, you just smashed your burger, right? It's kind of the same thing with drinking for a lot of people that are all nothing people. Like they have a drink in their hand and it's like, it's gone. It's gone within the first couple minutes because It's just something, it's easy. It's so easy to drink. And the next one's even easier. And the next one's even easier. Same thing when it comes to like smoking. Like I smoke one joint, smoke two joints, no big deal. I think there's a song about it, smoke two joints in the morning. Anyway, so you got to figure out like, all right, is this pattern okay for me? Like, is getting blacked out twice a week or three times a week like okay with me? And then you got to make a decision. Either create a guideline, which can be very difficult in this substance. Like, when you're talking about drugs and alcohol, it can be very difficult. More difficult to to create it in moderation than to just get rid of it completely, at least from my experience. So you have to really make it, and even in the beginning, maybe you try to moderate. Maybe you try to, oh, only gonna have two beers twice a week, right? But how has that worked out for you? I know for me, it didn't really work. So it's actually easier for all or nothing people to just shut that down. Like if it's a bad relationship and you notice yourself slipping down that slope and like breaking your word and drinking five or drinking 10 instead of drinking two, and you're like, oh, it's fine, it's not a big deal. Then you have to be able to like look at yourself, like self-analyze yourself and be like, all right, like, should I get rid of this completely? Like, instead of like, there's still a nothing component of the all or nothing people, but you just have to decide: do I really need this thing in my life? Is it really bringing value into my life, or should I just shut it down? And there's where the balance is. Is there going to be guidelines, or there's going to be shut down? And that's basically when you're all or nothing person. That is how it works. And to be honest, like I got diagnosed bipolar. Do I act bipolar? Like in the stereotypical way? No, I don't. But like literally, when you're bipolar, like if you juggle this type of stuff all the time, you're like, yeah, 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 really super happy, and then really super down, and you have mood swings, and then so it's like you're constantly battling this fight. Um, but for me, luckily, I have like if it actually is true, my diagnosis, like I have a very mild case. But am I all or nothing person? Absolutely, for sure. But I'm able to harness it, and you could do the same exact thing. And remember, it's like such a beautiful energy when you target it and you put it towards something awesome, like working towards your craft. You'll just be like, yeah, yeah, you work, work, work. But you have to remember to put in those little tiny breaks, like those breaks of time where like, okay, like let me pump the brakes a little bit and just relax. Then you have to figure out the guidelines that work for you and then stick to them, stick to your word. And I guarantee you that being an all or nothing person is such a beautiful thing. Just harness that energy and put it to work within your own guidelines. Keep your word, and I'm telling you, your life will change. Thank you so much for being here. Have a beautiful day. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, put them down below. Much love, and I'll see you tomorrow.